Professor Banji Oyeyinka. Joining us next is a special assistant, special advisor to the President on Industrialization, AFDB. He joins us from Abidjan. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today on the program. Well,
good morning, please.
You know, looking through some of these headlines, the narratives of what is playing out here, just wondering what's going through your mind, especially from the investment perspective, the expectations as to what those investments should be by now, and how threatened they could be with all this rhetoric coming from almost every part of the country. What's going on?
Thank you, Chris. I think what I would like to say is that we need to tone down the rhetoric. We need to give comfort to people who have been involved in this, particularly those who have suffered crop losses, including even some of the innocent herders, part of them also. Obviously, in society, it's not everyone that will be a criminal. So some of them probably have been victims of their own colleagues also. So, but I think the most important thing now for us is to actually tone down all of this rhetoric by government at all levels, and I mean by all levels, federal, state, local government, to come out with a bold plan to resolve this issue. And there are technological, industrial issues that can be used to solve this problem. As a matter of fact, the federal government had a national livestock transformation plan, which when we read through it, in trying to work with them on our own special agro-industrial processing zone, was quite detailed. The model was quite good. They actually learned a lot from past failures. And by the way, this is not the first time that this issue has come up. There have been attempts right from the time of Chief Awolowo, established all these farm settlements in the Western region. And the particular conversation around the National Livestock Transformation Plan, which was in the Office of the Vice President, actually looked at all the issues, mostly issues of land titles, lack of specialized cattle breeds, the absence of reliable and quality animal feeds, various things that made the previous plan to fail. And they came up with very key critical pillars to form that plan. There are about 4 or 5 of them. One is that we need to develop commercial crop production to support livestock. In other words, you assume that there will be a zone or a cluster for livestock, meaning ranches, which is also what we have proposed to the government from our side. So that was in the plan. And there will be proper arrangements made to supply quality fodder and other feed materials. The second pillar was that there will be a formation of producers into clusters to create viable ranch head sizes. In other words, there will be some cooperatives, things that have been done in other places across the world. Then there will be creation of cooperatives to facilitate improved access to inputs, especially water, infrastructure, finance, market, support services. And then there will be development of on-site or proximate processing services to minimize transportation. In other words, you want to create a proximate zone where almost everything you require is available. So that will reduce all of this heading, running all over the place from one part of the country to the other, which has led to all the issues we have now. So the plan actually took us, into account all of the issues that we are witnessing right now.
Okay. Well, just before you proceed on that, which we of course we'll talk about in a bit, but I just want to something you mentioned earlier in your opening comments about toning down the rhetoric. Now, we've seen in time past how generalizations happen with any tribe in this country, where maybe certain thing happens, then we generalize as though everyone from that tribe that is guilty of such. And politicians leverage on this one, and as the DSS said, take advantage of our fault lines for their own benefit. But now, do you see a change? Because if it benefits them politically at the time, do you think that at this time they would have seen that, wait a minute, this may just put us on the cliff if we don't rise and call a spade a spade? Yes, there are criminal elements all over the place, But do you see them just hitting the nail on the head with a view to addressing this, no matter whose ox is God?
I sincerely hope so, Chris. I sincerely hope so because it doesn't benefit anybody. I mean, just take a look at what is happening all over the world, all over this country now. We are getting to a point where, the whole security arrangement is breaking down. Everyone can wake up any day and become their own security apparatus. And to some extent, they feel justified because they don't feel safe. So I think it's incumbent on the leadership to actually come out boldly to acknowledge that we have an issue. We do have a problem, issue that we shouldn't have actually. And I'm speaking as a Nigerian now, not as a bank staff. I'm speaking to my own country that we need to acknowledge that we have failed ourselves in many ways. As I said to you earlier, the plan that even the government had, which we had in our special livestock zone also, was actually meant to modernize the system and to go away. It's like, sticking to hoe and cutlass. When you look at the crop side, it's like sticking to hoe and cutlass. When you look at the header, it's like saying, oh, this is how our, ancestors did it. We'll go ahead and not wear clothes, or we'll just defecate everywhere we like, So they hope that, as you said, the political leaders will see their own self-interest in this, that it doesn't benefit them. It doesn't benefit the government. If a government fails, we all are in trouble. It's not in anybody's interest that this kinds of things should continue. So we're hoping and appealing to people that they really see the need to hit the nail on the head, see that the communities are suffering their own, the people who voted for them are actually crying out to them to address this conflict, improve access to justice and peace, address the need of affected populations. I had some governor in the Southeast saying they are actually been paying compensation to those who lost their crops. And also those whose cows were killed, where there were genuine cases of error. So this is the sort of thing that leaders should do. Come out boldly and say, look, things are not working. We need to address them. And not
Prof.
Hide our faces. Yes.
Right. I'm really interested in some of the solutions which you have touched on. We'll elaborate on them in a moment. But, yes, we need to upgrade, the processes, the way, business of ranching or herding is done, not stick to the old ways. But looking at the framework, and I'm speaking specifically about the structure of governance, what the Constitution says, who should do this and who should not do this, what is exclusive, what is concurrent on that list. Do you think that if we don't touch on that, we will succeed with these solutions? Because take a look at take, for example, the NLTP, which the government put out. You had a lot of states saying, well, I don't want to be a part of this because I think it is ruga. So you still saw a lot of those fault lines, if I can say, being exploited, as it were. So before we proffer these solutions, don't you think we should also take a look at our structure of governance such that it would readily accept and implement effectively these solutions?
No, I agree. I mean, the whole framework doesn't preclude anything. I mean, there are other conversations going on in our country, and we need to have those conversations. People should not be afraid to have conversations around all of this so that we can solve the issues. By the way, I guess you are talking about issues of land access, and also people who are worried about ancestral lands. Now, the solution for us is to make this a business. People have poultries, they have piggeries, they have all kinds. There are business models that enables you to you don't necessarily have to accommodate, this whole culturally based cattle rearing model. This is what we are proposing is business-oriented model. This is what modern agriculture is all about. I mean, there are countries even in Africa, Botswana, South Africa, that are exporters of beef because they actually have modernized the system. So I understand precisely what you are saying. By the way, one of the things that actually should be done also is to stop this movement of people all over the place. The pastoralists, as I said, they should also be dealt with in a way to transform them into modern business people. It will take time. If I remember, the NLTP was a 10-year plan. It involves a lot of education, reorientation, changing mindsets. For example, people today have a mindset that grass is some sort of the commons. So it doesn't have a cost. You just eat, you just take your cattle somewhere and they just chew up the grass. No, it's not. It has a cost. Someone planted it and someone owned the land. So part of the mindset is actually educating people and letting them know that when you move into someone's farm, you pay. There's a cost to it. So the point you made is very relevant. There has to be, it has to be a business. This is really the issue. And it doesn't have to be by somebody from another part of the country doing it in your particular community. It could be a business person in Edo or in Oyo or somewhere, establish his own ranch. Someone from another place could establish their own ranch. Thankfully, we are having a modernized, railway system now. One can envisage that in the next 5 years, you could be anywhere and transport your meat cheaply across the country. This is the kind of thing I have in mind. You cannot just go and take land titling and land issues are very sensitive everywhere in the world. And people get very edgy when they see it as some sort of an internal colonial arrangement. So we should understand that, and we should give room to that to enable people to do things in the way others have done it. This is happening everywhere. Brazil, all these big countries are huge cattle countries. You don't hear about people fighting and chewing up land. And by the way, when you do it properly, then our dairy industry will also boom. Because when you drive cattle all over the country, they are lean, they are, they are not really controlled in the way that can enable them create a proper dairy industry. So yes, it should be a business. This is really the point that we are making. It should be it will be a modern industrialized farming, and we can achieve it. I'm telling you, if these things are followed in 10 years, we won't hear about all of this anymore.
But perhaps, Prof, that really is where the problem is when you talk about for educating people who are involved in this. And I'm wondering why it's even an issue. Because, I mean, you would remember very well that earlier on in the life of Nigeria, I mean, it wasn't really a problem. I mean, ranching wasn't so much of an issue, back in time. But so now that this has become this, I'm wondering, where do we even begin this messaging from? On the one hand, are the herders themselves who have been reported largely to now carry sophisticated arms. On the other hand, are those who believe that these herders are employees of certain owners. Now, where do we begin this messaging from? Given that this plan is a plan initiated by the federal government, supposed to be a 10-year plan. Okay, so where should the messaging begin from? And to whom should we be speaking? The herders themselves or the owners of the cattle who employ the herders?
Everything should happen at the same time. When you have an issue like this, for me, with all the crises in our hands, the crisis of coronavirus, the crisis of the economy, it's a time to build back stronger, better, in a bold way. And it should happen at all levels of government. Where does the message begin from? The people who own cattle, they know themselves. They should talk to them, associations, for example. Government comes out with a plan. Government has a lot of power if there's a willingness to execute a plan. I think it has to do with what people call political will, right? So it has to happen all at the same time if we want to solve the problem. We have to have serious talking to ourselves, the owners of the cattle, those who are employed, uh, pastoralists, for example. In fact, the plan I remember the NLTP had an arrangement that over 500 pastoralists will have been actually uh, trained. There will have been like 1 million jobs or something like that within 3 years, because it is a massive undertaking. It's a huge supply chain. Can you imagine the kind of veterinary services, livestock feed factories, and all kinds that will be involved? So there is an incentive to do it if we show it that, look, people can make money from it. And this is really what a business person wants to hear, that the alternative that we have now of people getting killed, people getting kidnapped and murdered, and all the disharmony that we have thrown up in our country, there's an alternative scenario. So to answer your question directly, government has to come out boldly and say, this is the plan. And government has the enforcement mechanisms. They can enforce it. The same way you have incentives and inducement mechanism, you have enforcement. You create a law and people have to fall in line. When people see that the laws are equitable and that there's equity in it, there's justice in it, people will follow. It's the same as the same law that established poultry, piggeries, and whatever it is. Why this has become an issue is really baffling to many people. According to all the statistics you have, Nigeria creates also a very huge leather industry. If we organize ourselves properly, we could create a huge dairy industry. So there is incentive to do it, and we should talk to everybody simultaneously at the same time.
Well, clearly, I was actually going to ask you what the value of the livestock industry in Nigeria is. Thank you. I was going to ask you, what is the value of the livestock industry in Nigeria as it stands? I know there is that Africa livestock plan that targets 2050, which is about a good number of years from now. If we're going to put a value to it, how much would you say we are looking at in terms of the value of the livestock industry in Nigeria? And why is it difficult for people to get the message? Because it will seem like there is more to this than economy.
No, Chris, there are several estimates. I mean, globally, it's about 1.3 trillion business. Nigeria here has about 61 million heads, in addition to poultry, goats, and so forth. It's a huge industry. It's a huge supply chain that we can create. I think the last point you made is what we need to really examine ourselves. Sometimes you have to thought, is there something else besides why people are so locked into this kind of thinking? And I think it will take a lot of education. As I said, people, there are two issues that worry many people who consider themselves as victims. One is this idea of the commons, that grass is the commons. You can just walk into my farm and eat up my maize, and that it's just it's God-given land. Somebody invested in it. I think there's huge education that we need to give to people. The second one is land titling issue. And, good or bad, state governors have authority over land. So they have a lot of say, as you saw, for example, with Ondo State, in giving directive on how land should be treated. If you want to establish a business, you apply for a certificate of occupancy for the factory, for the land. It's the same way. So, it's a huge enterprise. I can't give you a precise, but I can give you an idea that one of the fallouts or linkages to the specific cattle meat industry is also dairy. Dairy is huge. And we need to tap into it. Leather business is huge. And luckily also Nigerian leather shoes sector, despite all the difficulties, they've been really doing very well, although we are not part of the big exporters even from Africa. Ethiopia is right ahead of us. Morocco is ahead of us. We need to revamp that particular sector. Leather, shoes, bags. Those are big areas that countries like China, Korea, you'll be very surprised, took over when we fell behind, just like we fell behind even in basic crops and food, rice, maize, wheat, for example. So, and all of those are also involved in this whole livestock arrangement. In fact, second to agriculture crop is livestock. And that is, you are talking about almost 25-30% contribution to our GDP. So it's not a small area. It's an area that can contribute huge employment, employ a significant percentage of unemployed young people. And and more than that, it's something that can really begin to be one of the growth sectors of our economy, because we need certain, what you might call lead sectors to grow the economy. From where we are, people are predicting 1.2% growth this year. We need 5 times that.
And we even keep saying that we don't need to go too far. There's several countries, even developing countries, that have good examples when you talk about dairy product. India, for instance, they've got that move. Beautiful examples everywhere that we can even take a look at. But, speaking about industrializing the agri sector, looking at all of this as it's playing out, how much impact is it having on our plan to industrialize that agri sector?
Oh, it will be huge, Chris. I wrote a certain piece recently, and I was showing how a small country like Korea, today's population is 50 million, right? Of Korea, we are 200 million. That's so they're a quarter of our population. In 1960, we were, roughly around the same GDP per capita, around 100, 150, Nigeria, the same country. Their overall GDP wealth was about 1.3 billion. By 2019, that country has GDP of 1.4 trillion. And we are still stuck at $400 billion. And we have 200 million people. Their industrialization, started in agriculture. The first thing they did also was to say, look, we need to feed ourselves. Same with Indonesia, Malaysia, and India that you mentioned. All of those countries, you have to, first of all, feed yourself. Stop importing food. So basically, you are industrializing the agricultural sector, including livestock. What we are trying to say actually is to industrialize the livestock sector. Go away from people roaming all over the place fighting. Stop using hoe and cutlass. Stop using, low-tech technologies. And I'm always quoting a country like Netherlands. They have maybe 1/10 of the cattle we have, and they feed, the dairy industry is exploding. Sometimes they don't even know what to do with the milk. They throw them away, especially the whole of the EU. So it has massive impact. If we do it well, it will have massive impact on the economy. It will be one of the growth sectors. And like I said, it has spin-offs. When you start something like this, you just cannot know how far it's going to go. Leather, like I said, employment of shoes, people in shoes subsector, leather bags, and so forth. So it is, for me, if I will advise those who are in authority, I would say, let's take this. Let's use this crisis. Use it as a turning point for our country. Let's build back boldly. Use it. Make a big announcement and stick to the plan. Give people hope for the next 1 year and say, look, we've heard you. We're going to do this. This is what big countries do. This is what big leaders do. I mean, I'm talking of big leaders with a heart. That's what we should do.
All right, Prof.
And if we change the structure of our economy.
We certainly do thank you, Professor Banji Oyelaron Oyeyinka, Special Advisor, Industrialization to the President, AFDB. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. Thank you so much.